The Ancients' World. Chapter 261, Waiting for the Signal. The morning sun shines through the window and makes the room bright. I lean up from the bed, and I remove the sheets from me. I rub my eyes to get the crust out. Sally is still asleep, and from the looks of it, Haley was able to sleep in the chair. I reach over and lightly shake Sally, and she groans at the idea of getting up. We need to be ready for the signal. It could happen at any time. Sally slowly lifts her body out of bed, and I get out of the bed fully and stretch my body. I quickly equip my armor and weapon. Haley starts moving, and I watch her eyes slowly open. She struggles too and has to get the crust out of her eyes. Morning, you're going to have to pay for breakfast, Haley. I'm out of gold. She finishes getting the crust out of her eyes, and she looks at me. She gets up and heads for the door. She's going to be overcharged for the food. The natives of Gaia are very unhappy with the players right now. They're overcharging in hopes of getting back at the players. Some players will feel the burn from their attempts, but not players like Haley and me. Sally scoots out of bed and starts picking up the clothes that she left on the floor. She doesn't have an inventory. She gets dressed in her gear and stretches her body. I'm starving. Let's hope we can get some good food. Ever since we had the player-made food, it's been hard to eat anything else. Once you've had something as good as that, it's hard to find a substitute or replacement. We walk to the bedroom door, and we both head downstairs. I see Haley having to put down a medium sack of gold for the orders. She waves us over so we can. Sally and I make our way over and sit down at the table. The waitress comes out and is waiting for our orders. Sally orders a medium rare steak, and I copy her. Haley orders a hamburger and a side of mashed potatoes. It looks like we have a beef-filled breakfast today. The waitress leaves without saying anything else. I have a feeling it's going to be hard for us new people to show our faces around public areas for a while. I nod my head in agreement with Haley. Life will get harder for us players, and we can't do anything to stop it. We've brought this on ourselves. In a manner of speaking. The fact that the natives of Gaia are getting caught between the battles we players have with monsters and forces after us is not good. It will help that a player is the next pope, but without more high-ranking offices filled. I don't doubt the possibility of a purge. The natives will end up getting sick of us and will eventually try and rid us of Gaia. This is all a theory, of course. You got a deep look in your eyes, brother. I look over at Haley and see she's staring at me. We all have our hoods on. You never know who could be watching after all. I'm just thinking about the future. There might come a time that everyone who's not like us will get sick of our being here. There is the possibility of a crusade against our people. As players, we are a separate people. We have access to incredible things and grow in power exponentially faster than the natives of Gaia. I think the only thing really stopping them from purging us is the fact we are technically immortal. Even if they kill our bodies, they'll never stop us from respawning. I'm willing to bet there is a secret lab somewhere. A place filled with the brightest minds of Gaia, looking for a way to get rid of us permanently. You're not wrong, but it'll be fruitless for them to try. After all, we can just respawn. Haley has the same ideas as I do. While we have immortality going for us, it's not like it'll be that way forever. It can be taken away at any time. I don't want to be arrogant about any of this. Taking the natives of Gaia lightly can bring greater effects to our future as a people here on Gaia. We need to be cautious. While the group of three continues to talk as they wait for their food, Kelly James is in her estate preparing for her meeting with her brothers. Kelly James' plan is almost coming to fruition, and while she is excited at the idea of ruling the barony, she needs to stay composed and play this little game the right way all the way to the end. She wants to make sure that when Sarah and Salyandra arrive after getting the signal, her brothers still won't know a thing. She wants them to be surprised at the manipulations that she has played. The truly masterful game she has won against them. One of my maids finishes helping me get dressed, and I look into the mirror. There is still swelling and bruises from Saliandra's attacks. My lady, are you sure it's wise to go back out after such a short amount of time to rest? The only one in my estate that knows of my true plans is my butler. So I get her question. My spies in my brother's estates don't know the full plan either. They won't like the fact I manipulated them, but they'll be free from their tyranny too. I'm sure that'll wash away an ill will towards me. My brothers might have stood a chance at seeing my plans and moves if they weren't so arrogant and self-absorbed. Not to mention abusive and hated. Their greatest folly was taking me for another regular woman who could be manipulated. You are dismissed. The maid bows and leaves me alone in my room. While I don't like the looks of the swelling and bruises, they're only temporary. Once I'm done with my brothers, I'll call another healer to finish the rest. I make my way towards my bedroom door, and I head for my office. The meeting isn't for another hour. That leaves me just enough time to figure out where my father's secrets were kept in his old estate. The only reason I'm alive is that I made multiple deals with Slayer Zirn and Saliandra. One of those deals was telling them the location of the information regarding the slave business here. Its connections around the rest of Gaia. He can have those problems, better him fixing the ones outside the city than me, I whisper to myself as I enter my office and make my way to my desk and chair to sit down. I open my desk and pull out a piece of paper that my mother left me. She told me that my father's most important secrets would be revealed only once upon this paper. It's a magical one she had made for me before she died. I was going to use it as a trumpet card to take him out, but he died before I could set my plans in motion. Now I've found another use to it. Mom said that once the secrets are revealed, I'll only have a minute to find what I'm looking for. After that, the paper catches fire and burns away. His most important secret was his connections. The location of the documents is bound to be on this paper. Its location is just as valuable as the information itself. I channel some of my magic on the paper, and words instantly appear. There is a single page, and it's filled with names, locations, and accounts. I look at the bottom, and I see what I'm looking for. He buried all the files regarding his work in his father's empty coffin. My grandfather died in a battle. Nobody could be recovered. So this is where he was hiding the information Slayer Zirn needs. I memorize the account numbers. I'm going to use those hidden funds to rebuild the city after I'm doing taking the barony. I hear the door open as the paper is set ablaze. My mother's greatest gift has finally been used. My lady, what would you like for breakfast today? You told me to make you a special breakfast for the day you succeeded, and I want to make sure that is what you want. I had forgotten about that. I nod my head, and my butler leaves. Today is a day of victory, and all the hard work that I've put in has finally come true. Everything is almost finished. Chapter 262, Sally's Vengeance. We finish eating our breakfast, and now it's the waiting game. Kelly will signal us through the magic card, and we'll trace the signature. We all stand up and leave the inn. I look down both streets, and the majority of the rubble has been cleaned up. The buildings, on the other hand, are still in ruins. I wonder how long it'll take them to rebuild. While we were poor, we always had a roof over our heads. Haley brings up some fond and not so fond memories of our lives back on Earth. I can remember most of the good times, and it was truly good times. Not having money was a real burden, but we always stuck together. That was until Haley started spiraling into the endless pit of addiction. That was the first life. I made sure not of that repeated the second time around. Do you remember that time at the park when I pushed you off the monkey bars, and you broke your wrist? Mom and Dad were so mad at me. I remember that day, spent the rest of the summer in a cast. That was before I was taller than her. Mom was in a mode I had never seen her in. Her wrath was unrivaled. I chuckle at the memory of her yelling at everyone who got in the way of us at the park and ER. They had to remove her from the room as they reset my bone. This was before Marcus was born. I remember that time you accidentally spilled Dad's hot coffee all over your arms. He felt so bad after that. You're his little princess. He bought you a bunch of toys to try and make up for it. We were trouble back then. We both laugh as we walk the streets. Sally chuckles at the stories we've shared. I want to ask Haley more about her travels. She let it slip. She's here on a mission for an ex-slave, too, who's a friend. So tell me about this girl you said she's a native that you became good friends with. Haley lowers her head just a bit at the mention of her. The amount of suffering and pain the James family has caused isn't something I can put a number on. Kelly James seems to be someone who wants to change this town and her family's reputation. I still don't trust her though. The only reason she's alive is that Sally allowed it. We could have moved on with our plans without Kelly, but Sally has decided otherwise. Haley takes a deep breath and has a solemn look on her face. Jasmine is a native of Gaia that I came across a little after I got my legendary class. She was a great help during the time, and we quickly grew into friends. She started traveling with me, and the better I got to know her, the more she started opening up. Imagine my surprise when I learned she used to be a slave, and while she wanted revenge. She isn't strong enough emotionally to do so. I stepped up, and now I'm here. That's similar to my journey with Sally. I look towards Sally, and I see her sad look. Talking about the subject isn't something she's keen to do. I don't like talking about it either. Seeing her in pain like this makes me furious. I understand Jasmine's pain. It's not something you ever want to bring up in fear of judgment. Sometimes though, you get lucky and find a person who doesn't judge you. Sally comes into the conversation herself and looks at me as she says the last bit of her part. She reaches her hand over and captures mine. She interlocks her fingers with mine. I pull her closer, and we walk shoulder to shoulder. You should be thanking his big sister. I'm the one who taught him everything he knows about women. That's a load of horseshit, Haley. She's wearing a grin that says her words aren't that serious. Sally laughs at the obviously fake statement. Is it all right if I ask you something, Sally? Haley takes on a gentle tone and looks at Sally. Sally takes a second, but she slowly nods her head. How are you strong enough to come back here after all that's happened to you? Sally stays silent at the question. I know the reason, but I want Sally to speak for herself. I'm not her voice, mind, and opinions. There are times to shut up and listen. This is one of them. I hate what they did to my mother and me. I hate that they took everything from me. I want to cause them the same pain they caused me. I wasn't strong enough at first, but after I met Sarah, he helped me gain the courage to chase these desires for revenge. He gave me the things I needed to exact it. I get small butterflies in my stomach at her sweet words. Well, the words about me. Haley looks at Sally and then looks at me. You've made me a proud sister, little bro. I hope I can make you proud of me one day. I reach over and sling my arm over her shoulder and bring her in for a sideways hug. She's already made me proud. She isn't the same stuck-up and demanding girl that drove our mother crazy and sucked all the money out of Dad's wallet. She isn't the fool she once was. Instead, all I see now is a mature adult that knows who she is and what she's doing. I'm sure that Mom and Dad would be proud just like me if they were standing right here. She stays quiet as I take a small breath. Haley, all I'm going to say is I'm proud of you too. You've come a long way from who you once were. All I see now is a strong, independent young woman who can fend for herself. She rolls her eyes at the sappy words, but I see the smile regardless. I let her go, and she creates some space. While we wait, what should we do? I like walking around, but all these depressed people are putting me in a bad mood. I'd like to get away from the surrounding area. It's really bringing me down seeing so much of this. I wouldn't mind taking some high ground and looking at the views outside the city. I'm fine with whatever. Sally quickly answers me, and I look to Haley to see what her response is. She nods her head in agreement. I instantly pick Sally up in my arms, and she squeals in surprise. I leap onto a partly standing building and launch myself off it towards the wall. I look behind me, and Haley is right on my tail. I land on the wall, and I gently let Sally out of my arms, and Haley lands behind me a second later. We all look out towards the slowly rising sun and see it illuminating the forest and area. I take a seat on the edge of the wall and let my feet hand off the side. Sally sits next to me and cuddles up next to me. She wraps one arm behind me, and I do the same. Haley stands at my other side. After a second, she sits down and relaxes too. I would have loved to see something like this on Earth. Too bad, we'll never get the chance while Gaia is our new home, and it's beautiful. I still miss Earth, just like my sister. It was doomed, but that didn't make it any less valuable to us. Sally leans her head against my arm and lets out a content sigh. Sarah told me about Earth a little. It seems there is much more to know about it than he originally let on. There is more about the Earth that I could explain to you, Sally. However, that'll reveal secrets and things I'm not ready for you to know yet. I tilt my head towards my sister, and she looks at me with a look of understanding. She hasn't told any of her friends about our origins either. It's something so complicated that no one that's a native of Gaia will understand. As we are sitting here in silence and looking at the vast horizon and incredible scenery, the magic card in my pocket goes off. I pull it out, and the other instantly stand up. I follow suit and look at the card. We'll be heading 3 miles due north. That's where Kelly is. Both of them nod their heads, and I look at Sally a little longer. She is definitely nervous. She's steeling herself for the confrontation. While killing the father would have been the best, killing the evil sons comes in at a close second. I pick her up in my arms, and I start leaping on the wall heading north, and I jump into the forest. Chapter 263, Sally's Vengeance 2. We land outside the estate that I assume belongs to the firstborn son or the second. It's large and has regular guard patrols. We walk up to the gate, but guards stop us. This is private property. Turn back or face execution. I remove my hood for the first time in public. I'm not in the mood to deal with jackasses like this guy. He quickly draws his blade, and the other guards around join him on the other side of the gate. Haley removes her hood as well. Sally hasn't, and I can tell she's getting more and more anxious as we get closer to the spawn of her torturer. The guards are on edge, too, knowing something is off with us. Normally, I'd give one warning before resorting to violence. I'm in no mood today. Make peace with God. They go rigid, and I can see how nervous they are in regards to my threat. I slowly draw the witness, and the feeling the witness is giving off is making some of the guards shake. One looks ready to talk, but I give him no chance. I swing the witness, and it cuts through their armor and bodies like it's nothing. They fall to the ground in a pile of organs and body parts. Some blood splattered on me, but it's not as much as I usually get on me. I look towards the massive mansion, knowing our targets are in there. You ready for this, Sally? I turn to her a final time to make sure she's ready. She removes her hood and nods her head. Her eyes are full of determination, and that's something that I'm seeing more and more in her. Overcoming her fears and moving on from her past. By doing this, everything in her life would move forward. There are many who say revenge doesn't help in recovering from something. The ones who say this wouldn't understand the suffering that Sally has gone through, the hardships she's endured. Forgiving someone for something so cruel and evil is wrong in itself. Killing and getting rid of that evil, despite revenge or not. It's the right thing to do. Then let us confront the sons of the man that took everything from you. She nods her head a single time, and we start walking the path up to the front doors. Haley is right behind us, and she's likely going to want to say a few things to them on Jasmine's behalf before they die. As the group of 3 walk up to the door and make their way inside, Kelly James is currently distracting her brothers. She's using every excuse and subject to keep them in their seats until the group walks into the room. It'll take them some time to find the room, but it won't be too long. It's not like the room is hidden. They just have to find the room that's large enough to hold a family meeting. The mansion itself is big but not hard to navigate. The mansion belongs to her oldest brother. She needed the gathering to be here. I knew that this place would be the only one where all my brothers would gather. Kelly, you have brought up enough problems and are now prolonging this meeting for no reason at all. Why do you insist that we keep speaking? My fourth oldest brother decides to try and speed up this meeting. It won't work. Slayers Irn and Salyandra are already on their way here. If not already on the property. It hasn't been on since I sent the message through the card, but I'm not going to get arrogant. I'm going to continue to play my part. Ensuing my ultimate victory. All my brothers focus on me, all of them waiting for the correct response to keep them here. I have that response. You all know why. The people are beginning to turn on you, and I'm doing everything I can to stop that from happening. That's a blatant lie. Not like they ever care to know. They would if they just asked around the city, but they haven't left their estates. The people are blaming you for not taking care of damages. Soon, riots will break out, and I wouldn't be surprised if all of them came knocking on your doors. This subject gets the full attention of all my brothers. They exchange looks between each other. Curious and surprised by my concern. It's all fake, of course. I don't give a damn about them. My brothers will rot for all the things they've done. I'm surprised, sister, you never cared to meddle in our affairs before. Why the sudden interest now? My second oldest brother decides to question me. He's the only one that could have seen through my plans if he wasn't so arrogant. Now it's too late. All of them are looking at me for a response. Now it's time for a masterstroke. To fully distract them. I indicate to my face and my injuries. My kidnappers were common people. They beat the shit out of me and demanded that I pass on a message to all of you. They told me to tell all of you that if something wasn't done soon, all of you would be burned at the stake for the whole city to see. I didn't escape. I was let go to give you all this message. I watch their faces contort and twist. The fake claims I have laid down completely convince them. I'm using their fear of death by the people to convince them this is the truth. It works beautifully. Suddenly, the door bursts open, and I see them. As Kelly watches the three enter the room, many of the brothers don't know what's going on. They are concerned and convinced of other things. Unaware of their sister's betrayal, and now the plans have come to their end. Everything that has been worked towards is coming to fruition, Sally's revenge, Haley's and Sarah's quests. Sally's thoughts are erupting as she enters the room. Seeing the faces of the brothers. The sons of James. The man that stole everything. She watches as realization dawns on them. She's Salyandra. That means all their fears are true. I watch fear completely envelop them. I stand next to Sarah, and I observe all the men that have come from the corrupted seed of James. You can't be. I look and see a fat ugly man. His resemblance to the first James is there. So much so that my fear comes back, but it's gone as I feel Sarah put his hand on my back. The man who raped me and stole everything. I will kill his sons and end his legacy. The pain at the thought that I couldn't give Sarah my virginity since it was stolen long before he was born. It fuels my will and anger. I watch Kelly stand up and walk over. She's got one last thing to do to ensure her survival. I've got the information regarding the slave connections of my father. I've lived up to my end. I hope you'll live up to yours. She's directing all these questions to me. I slowly nod my head and move aside to let her pass. Her brothers are looking at her with hate and betrayal. Realizing what has happened. She played them, and now that barony will be all hers. I promise that everything will change around here. She leaves the room after those words. The brothers are looking at us with incredible amounts of fear. You're all going to die for what you've done. Sarah is the first to speak, and I stare holes into all of them. Each one falling deeper into despair. Knowing full well there is no escape. None of you will try to escape, and none of you are leaving this room alive. How you die will be decided by Sally. When you die will be decided by Sally. How painful your death is will be decided by Sally. His words cause them to go pale. Now, Haley, say what you need to say. Haley walks out from behind us. She stands firm and looks at the men surrounding the table. I've been sent here by an ex-slave named Jasmine. I don't expect any of you to remember, but know this. She's another reason for your demise today. That's all she says, and she stands next to Sarah on his other side. Sarah places his hand on my shoulder and gets my attention. I look at him and deep into his eyes. He nods his head in confirmation, and now it's time to give these men what they deserve. People say that revenge doesn't help, but this is making me happy. I need this more than I thought. Chapter 264, Sally's Vengeance 3. Sarah is standing behind me, and I feel more confident when he is behind me like this. It's nice to have someone's never-ending support. None of you would know me, your father did, he took everything from me. Now, it's time I have retribution. I individually look at each of the brothers, and the one I want to kill first is the one that looks most like their father. I draw my blade and activate one of my skills. It makes the edge of my blade razor sharp. You. Stand up. The fat ugly man shakes in his seat. He's having a real hard time following orders. He slowly rises from his seat, and a scowl appears on my face. The more I look at him, the more he starts to look identical to his father. I burst forth in speed, and I drive the tip of my blade into his groin. Rayah! He immediately starts screaming. I twist the tip of my blade and make him scream out in pain. He falls to the ground, and I place my foot on his fat stomach. He can't move very well due to his weight. Please stop. I twist and grind the tip even deeper in. His father didn't stop, and I'm going to make him feel the pain. His brothers are trying to avoid eye contact. You're all going to pay for the sins of your father. I'm going to make your suffering long and make you wish you were never born to that monster. I can't help screaming out as I continue to cause the fat son pain. He has since gone quiet, and his eyes are wide open, and his breathing has stopped. That's when I notice that there is a big puddle of blood coming out of the genital region. His lower area is disfigured and a mess, no longer recognizable as a man's lower area. I straighten up, and I realize I'm out of breath. I start taking deep breaths, and now I'm feeling a little tired. I see the stiff face of the fat man, and I kick his body hard, sending it flying into the wall and breaking through it. Sarah is watching me, and he has a calm expression on his face. He slowly nods his head in approval. I look at Haley and see she has her head turned away from the brutal scene. They are brother and sister, but Sarah is much more accepting of brutal tactics and torture. It makes me wonder what caused the major difference. I turn my attention to the rest in the room. As Sally looks for her next victim among the James brothers, Sarah and Haley are watching the brutal scene. Sarah has a calm expression and is watching Sally vent all her pain and rage into the moment at hand. The history of Sally and her past is something many people would be uncomfortable knowing, let alone being with that person. Many people will say the current acts happening aren't the way to handle the situation. Sarah believes in a practical approach. Confronting and dealing with the very source of her pain is a direct way of helping her get over what's happened. I watch Sally move on to the next brother, and Haley and I are just going to stand guard and let her do what she needs to do. I can see by Haley's reaction she doesn't agree with such brutal and torturous tactics, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime event for Sally specifically. She's too sweet of a girl to inflict something like this on anyone other than the James family. Are you sure this is the way for her to deal with this? Haley whispers to me as Sally begins to torture another brother, hurting him in a similar way to the first one she killed. I never specifically said Sally should torture them. How long she should take and the method to kill them are all up to her. This is the conclusion she came to. Whether consciously or subconsciously. Either way, she needs it. Sally's been through more than our entire family times 5. Let her handle it the way she wants to. You can leave the room if you can't handle it. I won't hold it against you. Watching this kind of torture is something not a lot of people will ever experience, let alone willingly watch. So if she needs to leave, then it's fine. Haley releases a deep sigh and tries to drown out the scream coming from the current brother she's on. She's already finished with her second victim and is now on the third. No, I promised Jasmine that I'd witness their suffering for her. Do you think Jasmine would have done something like this? I don't know Jasmine. However, people are capable of incredible cruelty. Take the James family, for example. Take the scene in front of me, for example. Sally, who's the sweetest girl I've ever met. It is causing pain on a scale a man never wishes to endure. What I find surprising is how they aren't trying to escape in some way, how they've just given up on trying to survive. Losing the will to live. Only cowards don't fight for their lives. Submitting to an early death really says a lot about the will of these brothers. It's okay to be ready and willing to go when you're old or suffering from an incredibly painful and incurable medical condition. If you're young and not one of those. Only people like the James brothers would act in such a way. Only fighting when victory is assured and giving up when it's not. While the events in the room continue, Kelly is on her way to one of the more distant rooms in the mansion. She's being disturbed by the screams of her brothers. She finds a room far enough away from the screams and takes a seat on one of the comfortable chairs. She'd rather be home right now, but there are many things to discuss once they are done in there. She leans back in the chair and takes a deep breath. A smile slowly crawls onto her face. The reason for this smile is one that she's been dreaming and planning for a long time. I've finally done it. I've won, and the barony is mine. All the wrongs that my father and brothers have created and caused, I'll be undoing them all. Destroying the slave market here and freeing all the slaves. I've won, you son of a bitch. I scream out in victory, and I wish in all my bones that my father can hear my declaration in the underworld where he's at. I stand up and walk over to one of the mirrors in the room, and I look into it. My face is still swollen and bruised in some areas. I look at them as a sign of my accomplishments. I look so much like my mother, minus the swelling and bruises. I'm glad I never looked anything like that horrible man. I did it, Mom, I won. I can't help the sudden appearance of my tears and emotional pain. I lower my head, and I begin to weep like there's no tomorrow. My mother gave everything for the possibility of this. My heart breaks in the realization that I'll never be able to share in this victory. That I'll never be able to have a drink with my mother in victory. I love you, Mom. I wipe away all the tears, and I choke a little. She's the best mother I could have ever asked for. I fix my clothes and wipe the snot from my nose. I look around the room I'm in, and there are many old things that I've never seen. I don't go to my brother's estates very often. I don't like the feeling of not having a single ally nearby. That's all over now. I wait for time to pass, and after a couple of hours, I think it's been enough time for them to have handled my brothers. I leave the room and start walking towards the meeting room, but there are still screams going on. Sally is taking her time, and I don't hold that against her. I just have to wait until she's done. Chapter 265, Sally's Quest Complete. I watch Sally kill the last brother, taking her time as she does it. Just as she did all the rest of the brothers, Haley couldn't handle the brutality, but she still gave it her best shot. Sally causes the man as much pain as possible before ending his life. As she kills him, I get a notification from the system. I'll open it in a minute. I walk up to Sally, and I place my hand on her back, letting her know I'm still here. I did it, I fucking did it. She releases joy and happiness. I thought she'd have a harder time coming to terms with the brutality she's capable of. That isn't the case, though. She's cheering and celebrating that she's the one that killed them and did it the way she did. She leaps into my arms and hugs me as tightly as she can. I gently hug her back, and I can hear her sniffles now. It's time to let the tears fall, and I expected this too. She's done it. She's gotten revenge on the family that took everything from her. She buries her face in my neck as I lift her off the ground. Her tears making my neck wet. You did do it. I'm proud of you, Sally. Her sobs get a little harder as I say that. I let her down, and she dries her tears away, and her smile shines through. She looks kind of psychopathic with all the blood, but that'll wash out. It's nice that it's not me who is covered in blood this time around. Haley walks back into the room now that she doesn't hear the screams of the men anymore. I take it everything is done. Sally looks at Haley and nods her head. Haley walks up to Sally and wraps her in a hug too. I'll let Jasmine know that she has you to thank. Sally hugs her back, and I'm glad I get to witness this moment. As the two of them talk and catch up, it's time that I check the notifications I got from the system. I know that they're for the quest of Sally's revenge, and it is a legendary quest. Not one of true legendary status though, there is a difference. It's hard to see sometimes. A quest can have a legendary difficulty, but that doesn't mean it's actually of legendary status. Legacy quests and higher are unique and one of a kind. Once completed, the whole world will be notified, and special rewards will be given. I open the notification. Sally's past completed. Description: help Sally in her quest for vengeance against all the men that tortured and sexually assaulted her growing up. Help her punish the Elven Kingdom for their ways. Objective 1: when the time comes, Sally will ask you for your direct help in this matter. Completed. Objective 2: once everything is done with your quest involving the Dryads, ask Sally what the first step in her revenge is. Completed. Objective 3: head to the barony of James in the Kingdom of Pleer. Completed. Objective 4: once in the barony, find a way to kill the James family. How this is done is up to you. Completed. Rewards. Sally is free from the pain of her past. You have leveled up 3 times. You can now ask Sally more in-depth personal questions. This will lead to an exclusive quest involving revenge against the Elven Kingdom. Difficulty: legendary. Note: the great difficulty of this quest is the goals that Sally has set in revenge. If they weren't so great, then the difficulty wouldn't be so high. I notice I have a new quest, and I decide to open it. Revenge against the Elven Kingdom. Description: now that Sally's revenge against the James family has been completed, the hardest quest regarding Sally's past is about taking revenge against the Elven Kingdom. Objective 1: when the time comes, Sally will bring up getting revenge against the elves and the Orvalo family. Hint: this will occur during the time of fighting the disease quest. Reward: unknown. Difficulty: legendary. One quest is completed, a new one is added to the to-do list. I open fighting the disease quest to see any changes. Fighting the disease. Description: Sally wishes to find and root out all the evil and corrupted people tied to the James barony. Objective 1: once in the land held by the James barony, try and find connections that the barony has to other slave traders. Completed. Objective 2: kill or imprison all people that you find out about in progress. Difficulty: legendary. Rewards: unknown. Note: this quest is directly tied to Sally's past and meets the same condition of being at the legendary in difficulty. This quest is sure to update again once we get the information from Kelly. Despite the fact she's a James, I'm willing to be she's going to be different than the rest. I would have killed her before, but I can see now that would have been a mistake. I'm glad that I left the decision up to Sally. She let her live and be of use to us, and now it's turned out great. I have gained 3 new levels too. I open my player interface to see the new level and stat values. I'm still getting used to seeing the very high health and mana, but I'm glad I have it. Slayer, Zirn, LVL.193. EXP, 3/100%. Title: The Son of Archangel Michael, hidden, +3 more. Stats: Strength, 7095. Endurance, 7045 dexterity, 7215 speed, 8240 focus, 19660. Mana aura control, 6/100%. Health, 76,560,000/76,560,000,000 mana, 216,600,000/216,600,000,000. Stat points, 30 armor rating, 500. Inventory. Passive perks. Inheritor of the Sword, Son of Heaven, Slayer of Evil, Holy Willow Trees, Savior, Finder of Legends, the Divine who has legend destined for greatness, Dungeon Diver and Overachiever. Active skills. Heaven's Light LVL .59325/5900 protected by Heaven LVL .59225/5900/LVL .774600/130000 Parry LVL .5380/5300 Double Strike N/A King Slayer N/A Raging Machine N/A Winged Glory Angelic Flight Divine Pressure Exertion Divinity Pulse Controlled Fun. Level 193 now, and I'm probably the highest level among the players. Sally and Haley stop talking, and they turn towards me. Looks like we have many things to do still, Sally. She nods her head, knowing that we have other quests to complete. I look at Haley, unsure if she's staying with us or heading back to Jasmine. Are you going to be coming with us, Haley? I know you want to give Jasmine the good news, but we probably won't bump into each other like this again. Haley looks down in slight sadness. I should have figured she needs to tell Jasmine that she completed the quest. She lifts her head, but before she can speak, I get an idea. Why don't you come with Sally and me to figure out our next targets? Once you are done with Jasmine, you can meet up with us at one of the target locations. Haley thinks about it for a second but quickly nods her head. This way, once she's done with Jasmine, she'll know where she can find us. We'll have a list of targets. She'll have to meet with us at one ahead of time before we get there. We leave the room since it's beginning to stink from all the bodies letting their piss and shit out. We walk down the hall, and before continuing the conversation, we see Kelly round the corner up ahead. She looks nervous but also happy. We walk up to her, and she is slightly rigid. The information you see is buried in my grandfather's grave. He died in battle, and an empty coffin was buried. My father used his father's empty coffin to store all his most valuable information. The family graveyard is at the old estate. I nod my head, and we start to make our way towards the exit. Kelly looks as if she's surprised that we're just letting her go. She held up her end, and we'll do the same. There is no reason to continue talking to her. This is going to be the last time we meet. Kelly. Sally stops as she says the girl's name. If I find out you haven't made the changes you said you are going to make, I'll come back and kill you too. Kelly slowly nods her head in understanding, and we leave the mansion. We stop at the front gate by the bodies of the guards. It's late morning now, and we have the entire day to find the grave holding the information we need. Chapter 266, Literally Digging for Information. As Sarah, Sally, and Haley make their way towards the family graveyard, Kelly James is calling some guards to come and clean up the mess that Sally left. Since Kelly James has been planning this for a very long time, she has all the right bribes in place. Someone might question her about the things that have happened this day, but no one will convict her of any crimes. The common folk will be too busy celebrating, and no one cares enough about her brothers to really dig deep. Kelly James is now the only James left, and the barony is now hers. I stand at the gate as it gets closer and closer to noon. I can see the captain of the army forces stationed here in the city. He's one of the high officials I have on the payroll, so that he won't be questioning me regarding their deaths. I never informed him why I'm bribing him, only to turn a blind eye to the things I'm involved in. Legal or not. Once he sees their dead bodies, he'll probably realize that I've been trying to take the barony from my brothers. He won't do anything about it either. He hated them as much as the next person. Who knows, he might even thank me for killing them. When you make enemies of everyone, no one is your friend. Too bad my brothers never thought that. They believed as long as they kept the right people paid, they'll be untouchable. Things are never that easy. It took me several years to bribe the right people. Get the right moles and spies, and doing it the way I did was the right way. The guards stop their horses at the gate, and Captain Karen hops off his horse and makes his way over to me. I can tell by the look on his face that he's curious about why I activated my brother's emergency magic alarm. Before he can ask, I hold up my hand. It's okay, just head to the back meeting room, and you'll understand I called you. He slowly nods his head and waves his hand for the guards and soldiers to enter the mansion. They'll be coming out with cringes on their faces. I know that for certain. The bodies are mutilated, and as men, they'll see the damage done to the genitals. Seeing that brutality is going to make some of them puke. I lean against the gate and stare off into the direction of the family graveyard. I won't be able to see it from here, but I know where it is nonetheless. My brothers will be buried in that graveyard, and that'll mark the end of the James family. I'm planning on finding myself a nice man, marrying him, taking his name. That way, the James family will officially die. I have a place I need to stop off at too. I want to visit her after this victory. I head towards my carriage, and the driver is tending to the horses. He asks me where I want to go. Take me home and to my private graveyard. He nods his head and gets in the driver's seat of the carriage. We slowly pull off, and I look back towards the entrance of the mansion. I see some guards leaving the mansion stumbling and vomiting. I can't relate to their thoughts, but I can respect them. The carriage ride is slow and relaxing, and the feeling of victory hasn't worn off yet. I'm sure once I get home, my butler will have many delicious foods ready in celebration. I already had a victory breakfast, and I'm going to have a victory lunch and dinner. We slowly make our way through town, and I see the repairs on the city have already begun. The help I sent for has arrived, and my advisors are overseeing the repairs of the city. People see and recognize my carriage. They wave and say their hellos. The good people of this city are free from my brother's tyranny. After a while, we exit the city again and head towards my estate. The driver guides the carriage all the way up my property and brings the carriage around to the back. I exit and follow the flower and garden surrounded path to my private graveyard. I walk up to my mother's grave, and I sit time to catch up. As Kelly speaks to her past mother, much is going on in the city. The word has started to spread that the James brothers are dead. Many people have immediately begun to celebrate and dance in the streets. For the first time in a long time, the city's mood brightens up. Even with the ruin surrounding them, there is nothing that can stop the celebrations from beginning. There is a group of 3 in the James family graveyard, and they are looking right at the grave where the information they need is buried, and Sarah knows this is the next step on his fighting the disease quest. We all look down at the grave of Kelly James's grandfather. Apparently, he died in battle, and his body couldn't be recovered, so his son buried an empty coffin. It turns out it wasn't empty. We'll need a shovel or something. Let's look for a tool shed. There's usually one in graveyards. Sally and Haley nod their heads, and we look around the property. Despite the fact it's a private graveyard, it's rather huge. The James family seems to have been around for a very long time. I wonder what their ancestors would think about the last 100 years. From my belief, Kelly's father was the one that started slavery here in the barony. Before that, the James family's reputation was clean and respected. How far a family can fall in 2 generations. Kelly has a hard road ahead, and only her grandchildren will begin to enjoy the life of a clean name free of sin. I found the shed. I hear my sister's voice as it interrupts my thoughts. I head towards it, and Sally's already here. We enter the shed, and we all get a shovel. I'm glad that these two are afraid of hard labor. There is nothing more monotonous than digging a 6-foot hole by hand. While there is magic to make it easier, none of us are mages. We head back to the grave with shovels in hand and begin to dig. It won't take long with all three of us digging. I should still fill the time with some conversation. How are you doing, Sally? My first concern is where Sally is at mentally. Sometimes, after getting revenge you have thirsted for, it can leave an empty feeling. How big that empty feeling depends on the person. Sally stays quiet, contemplating the question and figuring out what to say. She sighs, trying to find the right words. It feels good, great even, however, it won't bring the things stolen from me back, my purity, my mother. I'll never ever regret killing them and the way I did it, but the things I lost could never be recovered. I stay silent at her deep words. That's usually what happens. While revenge is sweet and fulfilling and helps you move past things, what was taken or destroyed before or during the course of the revenge can never be recovered. It's something that can only be experienced and is hard to explain. I'm really glad Sally has gotten her revenge after all these years. I'm happy that I got to be a part of it and help. You can talk to me anytime you want, Sally. Remember that we are partners, lovers, and companions. You can confide in me and share any pain that you have. I've come to care and love you very much. She smiles and blushes slightly at my words. Haley just scoffs and rolls her eyes. You're just jealous cause you can't get a boyfriend. Maybe if you weren't so hard to please, you could get one. She gives a laughing gasp and proceeds to throw dirt at me. The next thing I know, there is a dirt fight between all three of us. While it's the dirt of an empty grave, I don't care cause it's a James. We get the extra energy out of our system and continue digging. After a minute, we start hitting the wood of a coffin. Time to get the information we came for. Chapter 267, Literally Digging for Information 2. Sally and Haley help me get the rest of the dirt off the coffin. I pick it up and lift it out of the grave. We set it on the ground right next to the grave. Let's open it up and see what's inside. They both nod their heads, and I rip the opening of the coffin off. What's inside is a single box. We all look at each other, and I reach out to pick it up. I take it out of the coffin, and I open it. There is a little crystal ball sitting on a cushion in the center of the small box. I pick it up and toss it up and down in my hand. I use inspect on it to see its information. Storage crystal. Description: this crystal ball is magically enchanted to record information and store it. Be it magical recordings or words. To activate the crystal ball, you need one of two things: blood from a family member or an override command. A blood sample or an override command. There is no way we can know the override command and the person that knew it is long dead. So that leaves only one thing: we have to go back to Kelly. You guys should inspect it too. I hold it out for them, and both Sally and Haley use inspect to see the information on it. I can see Sally's displeasure grow the longer she stares at it. I put the crystal ball in my inventory, and I turn attention back to the empty coffin. Should we rebury the coffin? Sally instantly turns to the empty grave and coffin and spits on them. That's a clear and emphatic no if I've ever seen one. Haley gently jabs Sally in the ribs with her elbow. Sally doesn't acknowledge her, and she turns around and starts walking out of the graveyard. I look at Haley, and she shakes her head and rolls her eyes. She hates them. You can't blame her for that. They brought it on themselves. She turns around without responding and follows Sally out of the graveyard. I look towards the coffin one last time. Your son really fucked things up here. This is the grave of the father who spawned the evil in the family. I turn and leave the graveyard too. I'm betting that Kelly has already returned to her property. We should head there next. It's going to be awkward since I told her we'd likely never see each other again, and here we are coming back. I quickly catch up with Sally and Haley, and they're silently talking about what happened in the graveyard. I'm not going to lecture you, Sally. I'm not that type of person in your life. I'm sorry for trying to make you the bigger person when it came to reburying a James. Sally doesn't respond, but the way she worded that could have been better. Sally stops, and so does Haley. They stare into each other's eyes, and I see Sally clench and unclench her fist. You don't have any right to say anything about my situation and feelings towards the James family. As far as I'm concerned, that empty coffin and grave should be pissed on by the entire city and all the slaves that the James family has been involved with. I watch a couple of feet away from the two. It's best not to get involved unless it gets violent. I don't think it's going to get to that level. Sally is smart enough to know that Haley is too powerful. As the group of three continue walking back towards the city and subsequently to Kelly's estate, there is a lot of commotion going on in the capital of Zenith. Zenith City is undergoing a huge military operation. Basically, they're going to war with Belvia. King Jackson is gathering all the troops in the capital to move out as one unit. The Dryads are joining them in their war since they share the same enemy. Belvia messed up in sending thieves and assassins after Queen Tessa. Jackson and his wife are going to move with the army together. Jackson is with his wife in a private carriage as they leave the city with their armies around them. I hold my wife's hand as she sleeps on my shoulder. I find it infuriating that the only way my wife can sleep is when we are out of our palace. Belvia has no idea what kind of mistakes it made. Yes, we are going to war. However, this war is going to be bloody and brutal. For Belvia, that is. The Dryads want to get to them just as badly as we do. My king, there is a message for you. One of my escort commanders peeks his head in the carriage window. I nod my head, and he leaves. I turn to the magical hollow projector in the carriage. It lights up, and Queen Eleanor of the Dryads is looking at my wife and me. I'm grateful you gave us time to prepare for the coming war. It's nice to know we have a full-fledged ally in our war against Belvia. It's a blight and parasite on this world, and it'll be an honor to destroy it. Queen Eleanor begins thanking me for the chance to prepare. It was only fair. This wasn't our war, to begin with. We were going to help the Dryads, but now they've made a full enemy out of us, and we are taking an active role in this war. Tessa fidgets in her sleep and pushes against me. Likely having another nightmare. I see that the feather slayer's urn gave her has fully merged with hair. She used to have such beautiful black hair. Now it's snow white. She looks at my wife, and I nod my head in confirmation. Our forces will be meeting up with yours in 3 days' time. It'll be nice to meet you in person finally. Once our forces merge, we'll march into the country of Belvia. I nod my head and look at her confidently. I inform her of all the supplies and soldier levels. She does the same, and with our combined forces, Belvia doesn't stand a chance in ground warfare. They might have advantages in magical weapons, though. They're one of the leading kingdoms in this subject. We speak for the next hour relaying information and coordinating troops. I must say that I'm impressed with Queen Eleanor's leadership. While her people are still adapting to the new world, they are doing it extremely fast. I have a way to minimize casualties the closer we get to the capital. She grabs my full attention as she says that. The next thing I see is her pulling out the horn of the forest. The legendary item I gave back to them in a show of good faith. The requirements to use that item are insane. Did you really find someone who can use it? She nods her head up and down and explains that Dryad royalty, such as herself, and forgoes the requirements. The royal family is descended from the creator of the item. They have special circumstances when using it. That's what she's explained. It's amazing to know that when the fighting gets really bad, we don't have to use our own troops. My wife begins to move around violently in her sleep. I won't keep your time. Queen Eleanor understands instantly, and the magical hologram shuts off. I gently wake my wife up, and she jolts up with a little scream. I'm not sure bringing her with me to this war is a good idea. I tried to convince her to stay in Zenith, but she's too afraid to. She also insisted she was strong enough to endure the harshness and cruelty of war. I'm going to have to do my best she doesn't actually see conflict. I don't want my wife to see the horrors of war and be changed by them. I hold her in my arms as she silently weeps from her nightmare. Having so many thieves and assassins attack you over and over again will leave a mark like this, especially on someone who isn't used to conflict and danger. It'll end up permanently hurting someone if they can't cope right. I'm going my best to help her, but she isn't willing to talk too much about it. Why won't the nightmares go away? I'm so scared to sleep. My anger and rage are reinforced as she says those words. Belvia and its king are going to burn for the things it's done to my wife. Chapter 268, Wars on the Horizon. Tessa is crying on my shoulder, and I'm doing my best to comfort her. She's trying her hardest to be all right. I've considered having a magician block the memories of the events, but I'd need her consent first. I haven't asked her yet if she wants to do that, while it isn't a permanent solution to the problem. It will help her get some ease of mind for the time being. Sweetie, what do you think about having a magician block out the memories of the attacks? She looks up at me with wet eyes and has a look of thought. She's giving the prospect some thought. I would really like that. When can we do it? She agreed to it so fast, and that worries me. She's in such emotional distress that she's willing to do almost anything to feel better. Even forcefully block the memories causing her turmoil. She's looking at me for an answer about when we can do it. I don't have a magician nearby right now. They are coordinating with the generals at the front of the transport. I told them they didn't have to be at the front. They said that leading by example will help morale. I wrap my arm around her and hug her. As soon as we meet up with the Dryads in a couple of days, we'll be merging armies, and when we have a meeting, I'll speak to one of my mages about it. She looks disappointed that it can't be done right now. She's going to have to suffer through it a little longer. She leans her head on my shoulder, and I look at her beautiful face. She has deep bags from lack of sleep and has a wary look about her. It's going to be okay, sweetie, I promise. She leans into my shoulder and hugs more as I say that. My queen is a wonderful woman, and she shouldn't be reduced to this. A woman who is in constant fear for her life. One that looks tired beyond belief but can't sleep. I slowly rock her side to side, in an attempt to lull her to sleep. Even though the nightmares are bad, she needs every second of sleep she can get. She snuggles a little closer, and I continue to rock her. My parents would do this when I had a hard time when I was still a kid. I don't know why, but the comfort of their safety always helped me sleep, and that is something I never thought I'd have to use. While the armies of Zenith and the Dryads each head towards the same location for a meet-up for the war, there are other creatures in the world planning things of their own. There are monsters, bandits, magical beasts. All these are looking to take advantage of the growing wars in humanity. The most notable of these is probably the firstborn child and daughter of the Dragon King. Nilmophius is the princess and second strongest dragon in existence. Right behind her father. She prefers to go by Nelly, with who she's familiar. I flap my giant wings harder as I fly through the sky. My dragon form making it easy for any living and thinking creature below me to see me. I'm not near any cities or settlements. The world of Gaia is slowly changing, and many more things are still to come. Father has warned me that there is a chance that the wars on the horizon have a chance to bring us in too. How crazy is that? Dragons being interested in a war between creatures that we consider lesser than ourselves. We are inherently peaceful and don't seek conflict. It makes me wonder why Father is convinced we will be involved in some sort of war. From what I've seen Slayer Zirn do, he is mostly to blame for the changes. I've been watching his journey and his choices. He's accomplished a lot in a short amount of time. He gained a lot of power, but in that process, he's unleashed many evils and calamities on the world. He's come to find friendship and love. Experiencing the touch and feel of a woman for the first time. An elven woman no less. When I meet him, he had to use a Pegasus to fly. He didn't have wings. I have the ability to watch a person that I've met from any place on Gaia. I'll say that I'm surprised about the developments with the half-elf named Sally. She was able to get through that hard exterior that Slayer Zirn puts up. I've come to learn his real name, Sarah, but I prefer to call him Slayer Zirn. One of the most shocking moments I witnessed when I checked in on him was the moments of passion between Sally and him. I'll be honest, I was hoping that I'd be the one to do that to him in my human form, but that half-elf beat me to it. I can't be mad, and I'm not. It was something that I wanted. Just because I wanted to have sex with him doesn't mean I'm in love with him. Not like how Sally is in love with him. Dragons work differently, and that includes all dragons. Female dragons, like myself, aren't so strict when it comes to sex. It's an easy process that happens when we want to. There doesn't have to be any familiarity between the partner of our choosing and us. As apex predators, we have powerful desires. So it's counterintuitive for our species to be picky. Our cultural ways are not understood or even known by many outside of our race, and we prefer it that way. Enough of this boring train of thought. I close my eyes, and I look at Slayer Zirn. He's in some city and is traveling with his elven lover Sally. I've come to learn that Slayer Zirn, or Sarah, has an entire family. One that came with him from a different world. That's what I've heard from my father, that the new people come from a different world. The other girl with him is Haley, his full-blooded sister and power legendary class wielder. Warning! Disturbing content ahead. Don't read if you're sensitive to fictional sexual violence. While Nellie flies through the sky and enjoys the freedom that comes with being a dragon, there is a discussion happening at the location where the monster horde's leaders reside. They're gathering for many reasons, and most of them can be guessed. With the growing tension between humans, the monsters are looking for an opportunity to strike. Gain a lot of ground in this war, and bolster their forces. The second general of the monster forces is about to speak at this meeting. Orkvar is notorious for his actions towards humans. I look at the other leaders in the room, and many of them are whispering to each other. We all know that we're here for the same reasons. I speak to focus the meeting. My deep voice dragging the attention of the other leaders and monsters in the meeting. While this is a golden opportunity to strike against the humans, I suggest we capture more cities and take their women. Our reproducers are dying at a high rate from the constant births. We replenish our forces through reproduction with human and elven females. My personal favorites are the human females. They can birth so many new monsters before dying. It's amazing. Your point is valid, Var, but our forces are strong enough to take a capital city and kingdom now. Why should we waste time taking little cities and their women when we can have a whole kingdom? General Oli tries to put holes in my concerns. He wants the war to progress at a faster rate. That's how you lose wars. Wars take time and effort, and they can't be easily won. We need soldiers, and that means more women. I lean back in my chair as arguments begin to break out. It's always hard to come to an accord and agree on a big picture objective. It's nothing new for our forces and effort. However, we are fortunate that the humans are warring amongst themselves. This allows us ample time to plan, and that's what wins wars: correct planning with the management of time. Time is everything, after all. At least in war, cause the longer the war goes on, the greater the casualties on both sides, but we reproduce much faster than our enemies. Using their women no less. Chapter 269, Unlocking the Crystal Ball. We make it to Kelly James' estate. We're greeted by a single butler at the front gate. She has some guards, but they are closer to the house. He fixes his monocle and clears his throat. How may I help you, Slayer Zirn? He knows my identity, which means he's probably out here to make sure that nothing happens to Kelly. I don't bother saying anything, and instead, I pull out the crystal ball from my inventory and show it to him. Ah, interesting. A magical storage crystal. He understands why we're here, but he's still very cautious. He must be aware of all the things Kelly's done. I place it back in my inventory and take a breath. We need someone who's a blood descendant or an override code. Since Kelly is the last living member of the James family, I'll need her to unlock the crystal ball. I understand her fear, and I'll come alone without these two if it makes her feel safer. I doubt it, but I don't think Kelly wants to be around Sally after the display she put on. I know I wouldn't. The butler takes on a thoughtful expression and places his hand on his chin in thought. After a brief moment, he nods his head. I turn towards Sally and Haley. You two can go back to the city. I'll meet you at the only other inn that's still accepting us. Since we already stayed at the other location last night. Haley nods her head and turns around to walk, but Sally stays forward and stares at the mansion. She hates all James, female or not. I place my hand on her shoulder in an attempt to bring her back. Go back to the city. I'll handle this. Once I'm done here, I'll meet up with you and Haley. She looks at me, and after some internal debate within herself, she turns and follows Haley. I turn back to the butler, and I nod my head. He slowly opens the gate and motions for me to follow him. We walk up to the mansion, and it's finely decorated. The outside has the taste of a fine lady. We walk inside, and I can see the guards are very nervous around me. Each one bows in respect as I pass. It seems my identity as Slayer Zirn is known, at least here on this property. She must have informed them that I'm indeed in the area and present a threat to her life. I do not need to kill her, and the world is better with her in it. Sally would disagree, of course, but she's not here right now. Sometimes separating yourself from a situation is smart too, and that's why I send Haley and her off. So she doesn't let her emotions take control. I must say it's an absolute honor to meet you, son of Michael. Your tales of adventure and actions are legendary. Lady Kelly is a lucky woman to talk to such an existence. He's very political with his words, but I know he's probing for any reasons that I'll attack Kelly. I respect how protective he is, but sometimes it's out of your control. I sigh, and I can tell he's waiting for a response. We've already had this discussion, butler. I'm only here for the information in this crystal. If Kelly James were to die, it'd be by Salyandra's blade. Not mine. I choose to use Sally's full name, so he knows what I'm talking about. I know he's informed about everything that's going on. There is no way he isn't. He was personally sent by Kelly to find a way to dissuade any violence. I'm a killer, but I don't kill anyone who doesn't deserve it. Kelly isn't someone who deserves it. He squints his eyes ever so slightly. Before he can question anything else, a world announcement goes off. Worldwide announcement: the Kingdom of the Dryads and the Kingdom of Zenith are currently on their way to a meet-up point for a full-scale invasion of Belvia. This announcement is happening because war has officially been declared. Players can approach either side to participate. There are rewards based on contribution to the war and how many victories you ensure. Worldwide announcement: the monster horde is on the move and taking advantage of the conflict within humanity's society. Their forces will be bolstered, and new monster troops will be made because of this. Many cities and towns will fall and the captured about of women will increase as breeding stock. It makes me sick listening to anything about the monster horde. When I get the opportunity, I'll help those poor women. I'll either free them and send them back home to their families, or kill them out of mercy only if they ask for it, of course. I watch the butler cringe and scowl as he gets the NPC version from the church. I'll admit, this war is going to be devastating for the future of the Great War against the monsters. I wouldn't be surprised if the church steps in. Enough chatter. She's beyond the door ahead. It seems Kelly is going to be useful one last time before we leave. She's got a long and tiring road ahead of her, and it's only going to get worse. After a while, it'll get better. That's how things work. You have a stretch of bad, followed by one of good. It can vary depending on the person, of course. No one is exempt from this effect. The butler pushes the door open and I see Kelly sitting in her chair. She stands up and bows politely, recognizing that I'm still the son of Archangel Michael. It's an honor to host such a guest. It's not every day that divine blood and literal godhood stand in someone's house. She begins speaking. In a way I don't like. I don't want to be compared to gods. I'm still human and thinking of myself as a god is extremely arrogant and dangerous. I'm not going to fall into that trap. I walk up to the desk, and the butler stands at the door. Kelly drops the formalities and pleasantries. Looks at me with caution and fear. Instead of talking, I toss her the crystal ball, and she catches it. I need you to open this for me, after that. You'll never see me again. She looks at the crystal ball and notices it's a magical storage device. One that holds all her father's secrets. She notices it requires the blood of a descendant or an override code. Just give me a moment. She pulls out a small dagger and takes off her white glove. She's in a nice white dress, fitting someone with elegant tastes. She cuts the tip of her finger and drops it on the crystal ball, it lights up, and many things flash through the hologram that the crystal ball is projecting. She tosses it back to me. You'll have permanent access to it, and be careful with that. It's a very valuable storage crystal about the world's illegal slave trade. I slowly nod my head and turn around to leave. Before I can, Kelly asks me to wait. I turn towards her and wait for her to start. I'm really sorry for what my family has done to Sally. She won't listen or take any apology from me, so you're the next best thing. Please tell her that if she or her friends ever need any help, she can ask. I owe her that much. The same goes for you, Slayer Zirn. While our first meeting didn't go so well, I'm glad we met. It's led to this. She indicates to the celebration banners and other party equipment. She's celebrating that she's taken the barony from her dead brothers. Kelly and Sally could have been great friends in a different life. One where Kelly wasn't the son of the man who enslaved Sally, and Sally being enslaved in the first place. Take away all that, and you have two similar people. Very strong and independent women who aren't afraid of challenges. Be they mental, physical, or emotional. Sally overcame hers, and I'm betting that Kelly had similar moments in her life as well. One where she had to overcome great pain. After all, I can tell her mother is dead. Anyone who's lost a mother has a certain look. I know it because I had it every time I looked in the mirror before I made my wish. I'll keep those words in mind. I know you'll do better than the rest of your family. Remember how many people you are helping. It'll help you sleep at night. She acknowledges my words, and I turn to leave. Finishing all the business with Kelly. We'll both hope never to see each other again. Chapter 270, Splitting Up Again. Now that I have the information in the crystal ball, I can start up the fighting the disease quest. Well, it's already started. I activate the crystal ball, and I begin reading the information. I want to give it a look over as I do. There are names, locations, and account numbers. People who are threats to the business and officials who've been bribed. As I read the information, I keep getting notifications updating me on changes to the fighting the disease quest. I stop reading some of the information, and I open up the quest. Fighting the disease. Description: Sally wishes to find and root out all the evil and corrupted people tied to the James Barony. Objective 1. Once in the land held by the James Barony, try and find connections that the barony has to other slave traders. Completed. Objective 2. Kill or imprison all people that you find out about. In progress. Objective 3. Eliminate the key figures in the slave trade and destroy their power bases. In progress. Objective 4. Kill or imprison Erwin Balak and destroy all his connections in his land. In progress. Objective 5. Kill or imprison Maximus Leo and destroy all his connections in his land. In progress. Objective 6. Kill or imprison the treasurer, Arnold Franklin, of the Kingdom of Pleer for accepting bribes for the slave trade. In progress. Difficulty: Legendary. Rewards, unknown. Note: this quest is directly tied to Sally's past and meets the same condition of being at the legendary in difficulty. No wonder the James family was able to get away with so much. They had a treasure of the kingdom of Plear in their pocket. In the kingdom in which we reside right now, there is still even more information to go through. I continue reading the Crystal Ball, and the quest Revenge Against the Elven Kingdom has also been updated. The reason it's been updated is that there is a mention of the Orvalo family, which is Sally's family. Apparently, the Orvalo matriarchs arranged the abduction, resulting in Sally's mother's slavery and rape. Revenge Against the Elven Kingdom. Description: now that Sally's revenge against the James family has been completed, the hardest quest regarding Sally's past is about taking revenge against the Elven Kingdom. Objective 1: when the time comes, Sally will bring up getting revenge against the elves and the Orvalo family. Hint: this will occur during the time of fighting the disease quest. In progress. Objective 2: you can either hide the information found about Orvalo and her mother from Sally, or you can tell her. Each choice has a different impact on her feelings towards you and her family. Hint: you have until Sally brings up getting revenge against the elves directly. So if you intend to tell her, do it as soon as possible. In progress. Reward, unknown. Difficulty, legendary. The elves are getting crueler and crueler the more I learn about them. How could a family do something like that? To their own flesh and blood. The question is, what do I do? If I tell Sally, she'll likely want to head straight for the Elven Kingdom. That'll put our mission of fighting the disease on the back burner. On the other hand, I don't want to keep this from her. It's very important, and it reveals truths that she didn't even know were hidden. My question is, why did the Orvalo family do this? It makes zero sense. As I think that, I get a new notification. I open it, and it's a new quest. Dark Truths. Description: find out why the Orvalo family has forsaken and doomed both Sally and her deceased mother. Revenge Against the Elven Kingdom is directly tied to this quest. So the more you complete and figure that quest out, the more this quest will develop and change with it. Objective 1: once inside the Kingdom of the Elves, locate the Orvalo family. Once you have this information, bring it to Sally. Hint: Sally doesn't know where the location of her family is since she's never met them. In progress. Objective 2: this quest will be affected by whether you tell Sally about her mother and the betrayal. So if you want this quest to progress, it's wise to tell her as soon as you can. In progress. Difficulty, legacy. Rewards, unknown. There are many new quests and things to do, but all three of them are connected somehow. This allows many opportunities to knock out multiple objectives at the same time. It seems the best move for all this is to tell Sally about the information we found. I don't know what it'll do to her, but I'm worried. She might get tunnel vision and want to head straight to the Elven Kingdom and handle all that. However, we can't be reckless about this, and that isn't all we have to worry about. Wars are going on, and there is a chance that we could end up dragging innocent people in. The top families and powers in the Elven Kingdom should be punished, but knowing them and the elves, they'll use the innocent as a shield. I'm not into killing innocent people, but if they leave me, no other choice. I'll do it, but that doesn't mean Sally will. I don't even know how she feels about elves in general. The only elves she's experienced are the ones who've betrayed her, and she doesn't even know it. Her mother died before she could even be old enough to remember her. This is going to get really complicated really fast. As Sarah continues his walk to meet up with his two companions, developments are happening in both the capital of the Plear Kingdom, the city of Plear, as well as the Elven Kingdom. The Elven Queen sent spies to the Plear Kingdom to search for and watch Slayer Zirn and Sally. Today she's getting their first report back, and the Elven Queen is in direct contact with the King of Plear. The Queen is sitting in the private meeting room and looking at the nervous King. They are here to discuss her spies' findings. I stare at the old King of Plear. My spies have come across lots of information in the small amount of time they've been searching. It turns out that Slayer Zirn and the half-breed girl are, in fact, in the kingdom of Pleer. What's more, is the king also knew. Learned it via a letter from Kelly James, a noblewoman in the area that Slayer Zirn and Salyandra are in. He isn't obligated to inform me, but now his kingdom has the full attention of the elves. Which isn't good for him, and he knows that too. So hopefully, he shares anything he knows and answers my questions. He fidgets a bit, and I take a small breath. Did you know that Slayer Zirn and Salyandra are in your kingdom at this very moment? He hesitates but slowly nods his head. Were you aware of how important Slayer Zirn is to the Elven kingdom? He nods his head again, and this time he seems a little annoyed. Do tell why you didn't immediately inform us of this? I understand that you aren't obligated to, but there could have been massive rewards in it for you. Now you've just gained my suspicions. He stays calm, and I see him growing tired of this. Before I can continue asking, he does something no one has ever done before. He flips me off and turns off the hollow call. I don't know what to do. I'm at a loss for words. I've never in my many centuries as queen ever been so blatantly disrespected. Son of a bitch. Ray. I get up with a scream and crush the magical hollow collar with my fist. My rage is quickly growing, and I have no idea how to calm it down. All I can see is his annoyed face and him flipping me off. Then to follow it up, he turns the hollow call off. The scene plays over and over in my head. I stand up and leave the room. I need to blow off some steam. I stomp through the halls of my palace, and there are small cracks in the white marble flooring as I do. Everyone that's ahead parts and waits for me to pass. I make it to my office, and I head straight for my door. I pull out a piece of paper and begin to write orders down to my spies. If he wants to play it like this, then so be it. I'll show him why you don't mess with me or my kingdom's affairs. My orders are to find and locate weaknesses in the king's palace and guard patrols.